And joining us with more on tonight's topic is David Morgan, the chairman of Sarasota's Housing Authority, and former Sarasota Mayor Fred Atkins. Thank you both for being here, and I can't tell you how angry I am at this story. You know, the Venice Library was recently closed down because of concerns about mold, and here we have another situation in actual housing, and people are breathing this in and getting sick, and the obvious question is that these buildings are decades and decades old. I would assume nothing could be permanently fixed. They should be replaced. What's the problem?
I think you're right. We have properties there between 50 and 75 years old. And right now we're looking to try to, like we did with Janie's Garden, where we were able to get some of the tax credit, which comes through the state for the funding, and able to transform that area. So that's something we're trying to do with those properties.
Let's break it down a little bit. Bobeth said in her story this is a federal program, so is it solely the responsibility of increased funding from the federal government that's needed?
So right now, public housing has about a $36 billion backlog in capital fund improvements that they need to do, and that's across the United States. And so I think even at the federal level, they're really struggling to find a solution to a lot of the problem, because what we see here is something that I've seen all across the United States.
And but the other component is state funding? So
there's a program, and it comes from the feds, and it's called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and that's what transformed Janie's Garden. So we had phase 1 and phase 2. So that money comes from the feds, and it comes down to the state, and then the state allocates it throughout the state. And so the city of Sarasota is competing with every city in the state of Florida for these funds.
And how, in terms of state funding, how have the funding levels gone up or gone down in recent memory?
This last round, they actually went up a little bit. So there's something called the Sadowski Fund, and our state organization was really instrumental in getting those funds increased. But
obviously not enough money to replace the housing.
Not $36 billion, that's for sure.
Mayor, you know what occurred to me?
What's that?
You could be penny wise and pound foolish,
Yes.
because if these people are getting sick,
Yes.
it is going to be taxpayers who are going to be paying their medical bills.
Yes, we are. And part of the problem is that not only is it a federal and state concern, the cities and counties of the state of Florida also can participate in those applications for those funds. The reason why Janie's Gardens was come to fruition was because the city and the county of Sarasota got together and decided that they wanted to make it happen because of the same reasons that the older facilities are going through. Janie Poe just had to go. It was just so decrepit and such in bad health state that there was no way that the city could justify allowing people to live there. Inspections, code enforcement can force public housing to do something about that situation there and in other buildings.
I would imagine if a health inspector went into some of these units, they might be under some obligation to close them down.
Somebody is responsible. There is no reason for us to sit here and look like a Flint, Michigan in one house in public housing, because that's not the only place that's old. You know, we got 75 and 80-year-old buildings all out through each section, and 60 and 50-year-old buildings also.
You know, I can almost anticipate what some of the folks who are watching this right now are saying. You know, my parents didn't make much money, but they raised 5 children. If these people want to live in subsidized housing, they should be getting a job and working to get themselves out of that. The woman in Bobeth's story is a single parent working 2 jobs.
Yes.
And I would imagine if you're going to lift your family out of that kind of situation, you're going to be somewhat handicapped if you're always sick because of the mold conditions in the home.
One of the things that they're doing here, that the federal government's doing, is called affirmatively furthering fair housing. And to really break the cycle of poverty, it takes a village. So you need the school board, you need the housing authority, you need cities, and you need counties. And they're really taking this multi-agency approach to start getting support for the families that they need.
Are we doing that effectively right now?
There are some places, you know, some of the successes that we've had with the city, or with the city, with even our early childhood reading. We just actually got a best practices commendation recognized by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We actually have a program with the school board and with the Community Foundation, where we're taking taking mothers, and with Alta Vista, where they can take their kids to school and they're learning to be nurses, and they wind up being nurses aide, and we've actually had some graduates, and some of them are our residents. So it can't be just done with one agency. It's going to take everybody to really break this cycle.
Let's just be clear about something here. Some of the video that we saw in Bobeth's story, can mold really be remediated to a degree that it would be, these units could be safe?
The remediation of mold is a temporary effect at best, and you can see it's only last 2-3 months in that building because it's in such bad shape. The cracks in that wall, and you see how many times that the housing authorities put paint over it, I mean thick paint, to try to cover it up and seal it up. But that family, I know Vernice, and she's really been trying to make this thing work for her and her family, but she just can't make enough money because of the very thing that we are dealing with. And the state of Florida froze a lot of the funds from the Sadowski Act to come down to affordable housing, and they just started increasing it in small increments when they were basically freezing that money and using it in the regular budget.
Fred, what would you say to people who we often hear from saying, I simply don't want to pay more in taxes. I pay enough, I pay more than enough?
Those persons need to understand that they're going to pay it one way or the other. If we allow sick families to live in dilapidated housing, they're going to be going to the emergency room as indigents. We pay those bills too. If we take care of babies and infants, they will be less sick as a 5 and an 8 and a 12-year-old. So we have to understand that the sooner we start taking care of the least of these, the better off all of us will be.
David, we only have a few seconds left, but can the Housing Authority do anything in the short term to make this a better situation?
We've hired a contractor, and we're going in there to see what we can do. And in the long term, we're going to try to replace this housing.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in tonight.